Let's discuss the poetry unit expectations. For this poetry unit, you will be required to create a portfolio of your own work. You will also be required to demonstrate the ability to analyze your own work, showing that you understand how and why you have chosen each word and figure of speech. This unit is supposed to be enjoyable, not laborious. If you follow me on this journey through the power of language, I think we're going to create beautiful things. We will study poetry written by poetic masters, both old and new. We will learn how to analyze poetry, and we will learn how to notice, observe what we like about poetry and also the world around us. Then we will create. Creation is the most powerful form of expression. Just think of it. You are a creation. All of nature is a creation. Music and art are creation. Food and technology are creation. Creation does not need money to exist. It's a higher order of thinking, of living, of being. In this unit and in this time in our lives, I think we should focus on creation. It will mold and shape who we become in the future, and it will always be a reflection of the time that we are in now. So, we're going to create a poetry portfolio. These are the basic guidelines, but if it sounds overwhelming now, don't worry. Just trust me, and I'm going to walk you through this. Week 1 will be an introduction to poetry. I'm going to introduce your poetry portfolio to you now, after I explain what to expect for each of the 4 weeks of this unit. First, your portfolio requirements, basically you're going to write 6 total poems. Your portfolio will include the poems that you write, followed by an analysis of the devices and techniques that you used in your writing as it relates to what we are studying. So for week 1, you'll write an Ars Poetica. Ars Poetica is a poem about poetry. I'm going to give you 3 poems as examples. You will choose to analyze one of them, and then you will model it, making it your own. You'll follow that by writing a paragraph explaining why and how you did what you did. During week 2, we're going to study some selections from a poetic novel called Out of the Dust. Out of the Dust was written about the Dust Bowl and the Great Depression. We'll choose 3 poems from the list of the selected poems, and you'll write a model of each of them, a version that is true for you. After you write your own poems, you'll follow that with your own analysis of your poetry. Week 3, we're going to look at 2 poems specifically, Musée des Beaux-Arts by Auden and Self-Pity's Closet. I'm also going to sneak in one of my favorite Maya Angelou poems, Life Doesn't Frighten Me at All. And in our last week, we'll work on sonnets. Sonnets are going to lead us into our unit on Shakespeare, where we study Romeo and Juliet. The painting on the left of this slide is from the Surrealism movement in art. Modern poetry also followed this movement. Poetic surrealism creates a juxtaposition of words. A juxtaposition is when we don't think words are supposed to go together, but somehow they do. It startles us because it isn't logical, but it still works because it taps into our unconscious thought processes. So look at Salvador Dali's The Persistence of Memory and notice what appears to not be logical, yet still creates some kind of meaning in your mind. When we begin a unit, I like to tell you what the final expectation is. What's the product of your work going to be? So we're basically going to start our unit at the end. That way we'll know where to begin. Your portfolio should be a reflection of your best thoughts and work. You should labor over which word to choose and how to create a precise image. You should ask someone else to read your work and have them offer you suggestions before you revise it and include it as a final draft. Your goal should be to refine and communicate clear ideas with attention to the details that you observed, so that your work will be a clear reflection of the way you view yourself, the world around you, and the issues that are ever present in it. Remember, especially in poetry, showing always works better than telling. You're going to want to create sensory images in your poetry. Your models eventually shouldn't look at all like the originals, because it's perfectly okay for art to be inspired by the masters, but it is never acceptable for your work to look or sound like the original when you're finished. Your portfolio will be due our 4th week in our poetry unit, and it will be due before we begin our final work on sonnets. As you work on your poetry portfolio, you will have this checklist available to follow along. You'll see here on week 1, you're going to write your Ars Poetica. After you write your Ars Poetica, that is your poem about poetry, you'll write a paragraph explaining, analyzing how you chose your words and which devices you chose to use and why. During week 2, you'll choose 3 of the Out of the Dust selections, you'll model them, and then again you'll write an analysis of why you wrote your poem the way you did, how you used particular devices of literature to create meaning. And then our last week of portfolio work, you will be modeling 2 poems, Musée des Beaux-Arts and Self-Pity's Closet. After you model each poem, you will write a paragraph explaining how you chose to write this art.